The Raymans demanded humanity kneel. Earth told them to start running. Overlord Fenris stood on the command deck of his dreadnought, malevolent black eyes fixed on the blue-green orb slowly revolving on the view screen. The primitive world called Earth, soon to be the latest conquest of the Rayman Star Empire. Around him, a task force of mighty warships hung in space, enough firepower to reduce the planet's surface to molten slag. Fenris allowed himself a small smile. This would be too easy. The hairless apes had barely achieved interstellar flight. They were centuries behind the Raymans technologically. His battle fleet could take their homeworld in a matter of hours. Fenris activated the ship-to-surface comm system, broadcasting on all frequencies. He wanted every human to hear this. People of Earth, I am Overlord Fenris of the Rayman Star Empire. Your planet now falls under our dominion. You will submit to our rule, effective immediately. Resist, and you will be destroyed. There was a long silence. Fenris drummed his fingers on the console impatiently. Then a gruff human voice crackled over the comm. This is General Donald Williams of the Terran Defense Forces. On behalf of all free peoples of Earth, I have one message for you, Overlord. Go to hell. Fenris snarled, the nerve of these primates. You dare defy the Empire? We will grind your cities to dust, massacre your people. Earth will be your Empire's graveyard, Williams cut in. See, we've been preparing for this day. You aliens aren't nearly as clever as you think. We've watched you, studied your tech. Now it's ours, and it's pointed right at you. Proximity alerts flashed red across the command deck. Fenris gaped at the readouts in disbelief. Dozens, no, hundreds of defense platforms and ships were decloaking all around his fleet, bristling with weapons, locking onto his ships. Last chance, Fenris, Williams growled. Withdraw now and we won't pursue. Push this any further and you'll see how primitive we really are. Fenris raged at the screen. Enough! All ships, commence bombardment. Wipe these savages out. As the Rayman fleet opened fire, space lit up with the blinding flashes of human missiles erupting from their silos. The opening salvos hammered Fenris's warships, overwhelming their shields and tearing through hulls. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks on the bridge around him as the dreadnought shuddered under the impacts. Visuals showed Rayman vessels coming apart, bodies spilling into the void. Fenris stared in mute horror as an armada of human craft surged forward, blasting through his crumbling lines, elite Space Marine boarding teams in tow. This couldn't be happening. Not to the Rayman Star Empire. Fenris's crew were shouting panicked reports. The humans had jumped a second fleet to their rear staging areas. Cyber attacks were shutting down critical systems. Comms were jammed with human propaganda, vowing bloody retribution. It was a disaster. Overlord, we must withdraw, the dreadnought's captain pleaded. We've lost a third of the task force already. Fenris nodded numbly, his arrogance shattered. He punched the emergency jump to hyperspace, fleeing before the vengeful humans could tear his ship apart. Set course for Remus, maximum speed. General Williams' voice boomed over the comm one last time, chasing them as they fled. You wanted to teach humanity to kneel, Fenris. But we don't kneel, we don't submit, and we protect what's ours. You should have left us alone. Now your empire will burn. Earth is coming for you. In the aftermath of the Rayman rout at Earth, Donald convenes an emergency war council aboard the Retribution, the flagship of the rapidly expanding Terran Defense Fleet. The assembled admirals and generals pore over holomaps of Rayman space, debating strategies. We have them on the run, Admiral Ivanova says, her eyes gleaming. Now's our chance to hit them hard, keep them reeling. Donald nods. Agreed. We press the attack, strike at their critical infrastructure. Shipyards, supply depots, command centers. We cripple their ability to make war. The Council quickly draws up a list of priority targets, with a heavily fortified Rayman shipyard at the top. Reconnaissance shows a steady stream of warships, troop transports, and invasion craft pouring out of its construction bays. That shipyard is a dagger pointed at the heart of every free world, Donald says. We take it out. We buy ourselves some breathing room. The Retribution leads the assault, a wolf pack of stealth frigates and destroyer escorts in tow. They drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, engines powered down, heat sinks engaged. The human ships drift closer, running silent, undetected by the Riemann sensor nets. Once in range, they spring the trap. All ships commence attack, Donald barks. The Retribution's forward batteries erupt, sending a salvo of antimatter torpedoes and kinetic harpoons streaking towards the shipyard. The human weapons punch through the station's shields like they're made of paper, tearing gaping holes in its armored hull. Secondary explosions blossom across the shipyard as the torpedoes detonate inside, setting off ammunition stores and reactor cores. Debris tumbles away into the void. First wave on me, Donald orders over the comm. We're going in. Time to introduce the Riemanns to the Terran Space Marines. The general leads the boarding parties himself, blasting his way into the ruined shipyard at the head of an elite squad. They storm through smoke-filled corridors, cutting down Riemann defenders with concentrated pulse rifle fire. In the station's command center, Donald's team engages the enemy troops in brutal close combat. The general smashes a Riemann trooper's faceplate with the butt of his rifle, then takes down two more with well-placed shots. After a vicious firefight, the command center is secured. Donald's hackers quickly get to work on the Riemann systems, extracting fleet movements, supply schedules, any intel they can grab. Sir, I've got something, one of the hackers reports. Looks like a major Riemann counteroffensive in the works. Massive fleet buildup at these coordinates. Donald frowns at the data. They're going to have to move fast to head this off. All teams, pull back to the assault shuttles, he orders over the comm. We've got what we came for. Let's get scarce before their backup arrives. As the Space Marines exfiltrate the burning shipyard, Donald sets the charges on the station's reactor cores and initiates a reactor overload. They destroy the shipyard, dealing a heavy blow to the Riemann war machine. The general grins as the Retribution and its battle group blink out, jumping to their next target. One down, many more to go. Emboldened by the success of the shipyard assault and other surgical strikes on Riemann outposts, the Terran Federation goes on the offensive, launching a campaign to liberate the human colonies languishing under alien occupation. Donald's fleet arrives in orbit of Taurus Prime, a mining world that's been under the Riemann boot for decades. The human resistance fighters there have sent out a desperate plea for aid, and the Terran forces aim to answer the call. The general coordinates with the locals, smuggling in heavy weapons and equipment. When the time is right, they launch a planet-wide uprising. The human forces hit the Riemann garrison bases and weapons depots in a series of lightning raids, securing a foothold on the planet. Colonial militias, armed with Terran-supplied pulse rifles and power armor, sweep through the mines and labor camps, freeing the enslaved workers. The Riemanns struggle to react, their forces caught off guard by the ferocity and coordination of the human assault. In the chaos, Donald leads a daring strike on the governor's palace, a fortified compound jam-packed with anti-air batteries and armored troops. The general fights his way inside at the head of an elite Space Marine kill team. They corner the regional governor, a vicious tyrant reviled for his cruelty, in his command bunker. After a close-quarters firefight, Donald kicks down the door to the governor's sanctum and orders him to stand down. The Riemann warlord snarls in fury, drawing a disruptor pistol, but Donald is faster. The general puts 2 pulse rounds through the governor's chest, then watches coldly as the alien crumples to the floor. Taurus Prime is free, Donald declares over the open comm channel. All Riemann forces are to stand down and surrender immediately. This world belongs to humanity once more. With the liberation of Taurus Prime, word spreads quickly of the Terrans' victories and the shattering of the Riemann armies. Across the galaxy, long subjugated species take heart, rising up against their oppressors. A ragtag coalition of free worlds begins to form, with the Terran fleets at its forefront. But even as the Riemann Empire crumbles, its remaining warlords prepare for a vicious counterattack. They will not let their slave world slip away so easily. As the Terran ships push into the heart of Raymond's space, Donald knows that the defining battle of the war is yet to come. Reports flood in of a massive enemy fleet massing at a key Riemann stronghold. The warlords are gathering every ship they have left for a last stand. It will be a fight to the death, with the hope of the universe in the balance. Donald grips the arms of his command chair aboard the Retribution, his face set in iron purpose. One way or another, this will be the battle that decides it all. Humanity's freedom or eternal slavery to the Riemann yoke. "Set course for the enemy staging area," he orders, his voice ringing out across the bridge. "It's time we finish this, once and for all." The victory celebrations across the Terran Federation came to an abrupt halt as alarms blared throughout the fleet. Donald stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his face grim as reports flooded in from across human space. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from New Eden, Proxima Centauri, and half a dozen other colonies," his communications officer reported, voice tight with tension. "It's the Raymonds. They're hitting us everywhere at once." Donald's fists clenched as he watched the tactical display. A vast swarm of red icons swept across human territory, striking with brutal efficiency. How had they amassed such a force without detection? "All ships, battle stations," Donald barked. "We're going to meet this head-on." The Retribution surged forward, leading the Terran fleet into the fray. As they dropped out of warp near the embattled colony of New Eden, Donald's blood ran cold. The orbital defenses lay in ruins, and Riemann warships swarmed like locusts around the planet. "Open fire!" Donald commanded. The Retribution's main guns blazed to life, lancing out at the nearest Riemann cruiser. But as the beams struck home, they splashed harmlessly off some kind of new shielding technology. "What the hell?" Donald muttered. Before he could process this development, a swarm of fighters poured out of the Riemann vessels. But these were unlike any fighters they'd faced before. They moved with inhuman speed and precision, shrugging off hits that should have vaporized them. "Sir, we're detecting unusual biosigns from those fighters," his science officer reported. I think they're piloted by some kind of genetically engineered super soldiers." The battle devolved into chaos. For every Riemann ship they managed to down, 2 human vessels were torn apart. Donald watched in horror as good men and women he'd fought alongside for years were cut down in seconds. "We need to take out their command and control," Donald growled. "Prep a stealth shuttle. I'm leading a strike team to board their flagship." His XO protested, but Donald shut him down with a look. This was the only way. Minutes later, Donald led a small team of his best operatives onto the Riemann command ship. They fought their way through twisting corridors, losing men with each firefight. By the time they reached the bridge, only Donald and 2 others remained standing. They burst onto the command deck in a hail of gunfire. Donald's eyes locked onto a tall, imposing figure at the center, Admiral Zorgax himself. The Riemann mastermind turned, a cruel smile on his alien features. "Ah, the famous General Williams," Zorgax sneered. "I was hoping you'd make it." Donald raised his weapon. "It's over, Zorgax. Surrender now." The Riemann Admiral laughed. "Oh no, human. It's only just beginning." In that moment, Donald's blood ran cold as Zorgax revealed the true nature of their attack. Earth itself was the real target, left vulnerable by the Terran fleet's absence. Even now, a cloaked Riemann armada led by Fenris himself was en route to humanity's homeworld. "No," Donald whispered, realizing the full scope of their mistake. With a savage growl, he lunged at Zorgax. The 2 leaders grappled brutally, but Donald's fury gave him the edge. He slammed the Riemann Admiral to the ground, weapon pressed to his head. "Call them off," Donald snarled. "Now!" But Zorgax only laughed. "You're too late, human. Earth will burn, and your species will kneel at last." Donald's calm crackled to life, confirming his worst fears. The Riemann Doomsday Fleet had reached Earth. They were out of time. The tide of war shifted in humanity's favor. Years passed as the Terran Federation expanded its reach across the stars, forging alliances and advancing its technology. Admiral Donald Williams stood on the bridge of the TFS Retribution, surveying holographic star charts. His weathered face reflected years of hard-fought battles. "Sir, we've pinpointed the Riemann stronghold on Quaradine," his XO reported. "Warlord Thraxus has amassed a significant force there." Donald's eyes narrowed. "Then it's time we finish this. All ships, prepare for jump to Quaradine." The Terran armada erupted from hyperspace above the harsh world. Donald's voice rang out across the comms. "Commence orbital bombardment. Soften their defenses for our ground forces." Lances of energy rained down on Quaradine's surface, shattering Riemann fortifications. Donald led the first wave of dropships, plasma rounds pinging off their hulls as they punched through the atmosphere. His boots hit dirt as he charged out of the landing craft, pulse rifle at the ready. "Push forward! Secure that ridge!" Terran Marines swarmed across the blasted landscape, trading fire with entrenched Riemann defenders. Donald dove for cover as a plasma mortar detonated nearby, showering him with debris. He popped up, squeezing off controlled bursts that dropped 2 Riemann soldiers. "Admiral, we've located Thraxus's command bunker," a scout reported over the comm. "It's heavily fortified." "Understood. I'll lead a strike team myself," Donald replied. "Have our heaviest units draw their fire." Under cover of an orbital barrage, Donald and his elite squad infiltrated the Riemann stronghold. They fought room to room, Donald's combat reflexes honed by years of war. They breached the inner sanctum to find Thraxus waiting, energy blade humming. The Riemann warlord towered over Donald, mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Your reign ends here, Thraxus," Donald growled, raising his rifle. Thraxus lunged, blades slashing. Donald rolled aside, squeezing off shots that sparked off the alien's armor. They grappled brutally, Donald using the Riemann's momentum to slam him into a control panel. Sparks flew as they traded blows. Donald's ribs cracked under a powerful strike, but he gritted his teeth and fought on. He caught Thraxus's arm mid-swing, twisting until the energy blade clattered to the floor. A final crushing blow laid the Riemann warlord out. Donald stood over him, chest heaving. "Surrender. It's over." With their leader captured, the remaining Riemann forces on Quaradine fractured. After weeks of grueling combat, the planet fell to Terran control. Donald returned to a hero's welcome on Earth, crowds cheering as he stepped off his shuttle. But his victory was tempered by troubling reports crossing his desk. "Another colony gone dark, sir," his aide said gravely. "That's the 3rd this month. No distress call, no signs of attack. They just vanished." Donald frowned, studying the report. "I want our best teams investigating this. Something's not right out there." As Donald dug deeper, a chilling picture emerged. Ancient Riemann records spoke of a deadly alien species, parasitic creatures of nightmare that had nearly wiped out their civilization eons ago. "Xenomorphs!" Thraxus hissed from his cell when Donald confronted him. "We thought them extinct, but if they've returned..." The Riemann's eyes widened in genuine fear. Reports flooded in of outer colonies overrun, conventional weapons useless against the xenomorph swarms. Donald realized humanity faced a threat beyond anything they'd encountered before. In a decision that shocked many, the Terran Federation formed an alliance with their former Riemann foes. Donald found himself working alongside the captured Thraxus, whose knowledge of the ancient enemy proved invaluable. Following clues in Riemann star charts, they discovered the xenomorph homeworld, a nightmarish hive planet on the galaxy's edge. Donald assembled a mighty strike force, human and Riemann ships united against the greater threat. As they dropped out of hyperspace, Donald's teeth clenched at the sight of the xenomorph hive fleet. "All ships, battle stations, for the future of all our peoples, attack." The space above the alien world erupted in furious combat. Terran and Riemann vessels unleashed devastating broadsides against writhing organic hive ships. On the planet's surface, Donald led the ground assault alongside Thraxus, fighting through waves of shrieking xenomorphs. "We have to reach the Queen," Donald shouted over the din of battle. "It's our only chance to end this." Side by side, the human admiral and Riemann warlord pushed deeper into the twisting hive tunnels, towards a final confrontation that would decide the future of the stars. The Salvation shuddered as another volley of incendiary ordnance erupted from its launch tubes. Donald gripped the command console, watching holographic displays of the planet's surface light up with fiery explosions. Beside him, Thraxus clicked his mandibles in anticipation. "The biomatter defenses are weakening," the Riemann warlord growled. "But not fast enough." Donald nodded grimly. "All units, push forward. We need to breach those outer layers before—" His words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the bridge. On the main view screen, a writhing mass of xenomorph warriors poured from newly opened fissures in the planet's crust. "Evasive maneuvers!" Donald barked. The Salvation banked hard, narrowly avoiding a collision with the surge of chitinous bodies. Thraxus leaned over a tactical display, mandibles working furiously. "There," he hissed, pointing to a pulsing node deep within the hive network. "That's a primary synaptic cluster. If we can sever it—" Donald didn't hesitate. "Targeting solutions locked. Fire!" Lances of energy sliced through the atmosphere, striking the designated point with pinpoint accuracy. The effect was immediate. Vast swathes of the hive structure went dark, xenomorphs flailing in sudden disconnection from the greater mind. But the victory was short-lived. As Allied forces pushed into the newly opened breach, streams of virulent acid blood sprayed from wounded aliens. Donald watched in horror as entire squads of Marines vanished in clouds of corrosive mist, their agonized screams cutting off abruptly. "We can't sustain these losses," Donald muttered, fists clenching. Thraxus's eyes gleamed with an alien light. "There may be another way. Our ancestors spoke of a weapon—" Hours later, Donald found himself deep within the bowels of the planet, surrounded by the crumbling ruins of an ancient Riemann temple. The walls were covered in bizarre glyphs that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "Here," Thraxus said, gesturing to a sealed vault, "the Oblivion virus." As they worked to extract the bioweapon, the ground shook violently. Xenomorph shrieks echoed through twisting tunnels, growing closer by the second. "We're out of time," Donald growled, hefting the virus canister. "Deploy it, now!" The warhead streaked toward the Queen's chamber, a pinprick of light against the vastness of the hive. For a moment, all was still. Then hell itself seemed to break loose. Xenomorphs turned on each other in frenzied bloodlust, flesh bubbling and warping grotesquely. The Queen's psychic screams tore through Donald's mind as they fought their way toward her sanctum. They found her writhing in agony, once sleek form twisted into a nightmarish amalgamation of chitinous plates and pulsing flesh. Donald raised his weapon, meeting Thraxus's alien gaze. Without a word, they opened fire. The extraction craft bucked wildly as they escaped the disintegrating planet. Through the viewports, Donald watched continents crack and heave, oceans of acid blood boiling away into space. He turned to Thraxus, seeing his own grim expression mirrored in the Riemann's alien features. No words were spoken. None were needed. They had won, but at a cost neither of them had truly been prepared to pay. Donald Williams stood at the viewport of the Vengeance, his weathered face reflecting the fiery destruction of Karn's asteroid base. The battle had been won, but at a steep cost. He turned to face Thraxus, the Riemann warlord's alien features unreadable. "We can't go on like this," Donald said, his voice heavy with the weight of years of conflict. Thraxus clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Our peoples tear at each other's throats while greater dangers lurk in the shadows." The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with heated debates and accusations from both sides. Donald spent long hours poring over reports, searching for a solution that wouldn't lead to more bloodshed. In the halls of the Terran Federation Council, Donald's voice rang out clear and strong. "We propose the formation of an elite peacekeeping force, the Guardians, comprised of the best warriors from both our peoples, bound by oath to protect all." Shouts of protest erupted from the assembled delegates. A human counselor smacked his palm on the table. "You expect us to trust Raymond's with our security? After everything they've done? Thraxus stepped forward, his towering form silencing the room. We have all committed atrocities in this war, but we fought side by side against the xenomorphs. We can do so again. Days turned to weeks as negotiations dragged on. Donald worked tirelessly, meeting with skeptics from both sides, outlining safeguards and protocols. Slowly, grudgingly, support began to build. Finally, in a solemn ceremony broadcast across human and Riemann space, the first Guardians took their oath. Donald watched as a human Marine clasped arms with a Riemann warrior, their eyes meeting in shared purpose. I swear to uphold justice for all peoples, they intoned in unison, to stand as a shield against tyranny and chaos, my life for the greater good. Donald felt a weight lift from his shoulders as he assumed command of the Guardians. There was still much work to be done, but for the first time in years, he felt hope for the future. Months passed as the Guardians proved their worth. They quelled uprisings, protected vulnerable colonies, and mediated disputes with unwavering fairness. Donald and Thraxus led from the front, setting an example of cooperation that slowly began to heal old wounds. But even as peace took root, Donald couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Reports trickled in of strange phenomena in unexplored sectors. Ancient warning beacons, silent for millennia, flickered to life. Late one night, as Donald pored over star charts in his quarters, an urgent message came through. A Guardian patrol had gone missing in a remote system. Their last transmission spoke of shadows that moved wrong and whispers that burrowed into the mind. Donald's blood ran cold as he realized the truth. The xenomorphs had been but a prelude. Something far older and more terrible was stirring in the dark between the stars. He knew then that the greatest test of the Guardians and of the fragile peace they had forged was yet to come. The harsh glare of emergency lighting bathed the Guardian Command Center in an eerie red glow. Donald Williams stood before a holographic display, his weathered face etched with lines of worry as he watched another star system vanish from the map. "Commodore, status report on the Epsilon sector," he barked. A young officer's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, we've lost all contact with the Epsilon colonies. Long-range scans show nothing. It's as if the entire system has been wiped clean." Donald's fists clenched at his sides. This was the third such incident in as many weeks. He turned to face the assembled War Council, a mix of human and Riemann faces united in steadfast perseverance. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face a threat unlike any we've encountered before," Donald began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "Our probes have confirmed our worst fears. We're dealing with an entity known as the Void Horde, an ancient, malevolent force capable of devouring entire civilizations." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room. A grizzled Riemann general stepped forward, mandibles clicking nervously. "Supreme Commander, surely there must be some mistake. Even at the height of our Empire's power, we never encountered such a—" "I'm afraid it's no mistake, General," a gravelly voice interrupted. All eyes turned to see Fenris, the former Riemann warlord, limping into the chamber. "The Void Horde is very real and very dangerous. My people faced them once, eons ago. We barely survived." Donald nodded grimly. "Fenris has provided us with crucial intelligence. The Horde uses a network of interconnected wormholes to strike without warning, consuming all resources in their path. Conventional defenses are useless." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, fear and anger mingling in the air. Donald raised a hand for silence. "I've already authorized the mobilization of all Guardian forces. We're establishing defensive perimeters around key population centers, but we must face the reality that many outlying worlds may be lost." Hours blurred into days as the Guardian fleet scrambled to meet the Void Horde's relentless advance. Donald stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, watching helplessly as another colony world fell to the invaders. The planet's surface writhed with cancerous growths, biomechanical structures sprouting like obscene flowers. "Sir, we've got civilians trapped in the Proxima mining outpost," a young lieutenant reported. "Void constructs are swarming the area." Donald's eyes hardened. Take us in. We'll buy them time to evacuate. The Defiant plunged through a storm of plasma fire, void-spawned monstrosities clawing at its hull. Donald coordinated the desperate defense, Guardian dropships racing to extract terrified colonists as nightmarish beasts tore through the outpost's defenses. As the last transport lifted off, Donald caught sight of a familiar face through the view screen. Thraxus, his old friend and comrade, leading a squad of Riemann warriors in a fierce rearguard action. "Thraxus!" Donald shouted into the comm. "Fall back now! We can't hold them any longer!" The Riemann warlord turned, mandibles spread in a grim smile. "Go, my friend. We'll cover your retreat." Before Donald could protest, a massive void construct burst from the ground, tentacles writhing. Thraxus and his warriors vanished in a surge of chitinous bodies and crackling energy. "No," Donald roared, smacking his fist against the console. But there was no time for grief. The void horde pressed on, and countless more lives hung in the balance. Days later, Donald found himself in the heart of the maelstrom. The Guardian Armada engaged the horde in the Typhon Rift system, buying precious time for civilian evacuation fleets to escape. The space around them churned with nightmarish void vessels, organic forms melded with impossible geometries. "Multiple hull breaches!" a panicked voice cried out. "They're boarding us!" Donald watched in horror as writhing tendrils of void matter punched through bulkheads. Guardian crew transformed into shrieking, mutated abominations before his eyes. His hand hovered over the emergency controls, a sickening feeling of déjà vu washing over him. "Forgive me," he whispered, activating the Oblivion virus countermeasure. A wave of sickly green energy pulsed through the infected ships, purging them of all life, both void spawn and Guardian alike. As Typhon's orbital facilities crumbled and its moons cracked like eggshells, Donald made a fateful decision. He plotted a course for the heart of the churning wormhole at the system's center, the source of the Horde's invasion. "All hands, brace for transit," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "We're going in." The Defiant plunged into the roiling vortex, reality itself seeming to twist and shatter around them. When they emerged, Donald found himself in a realm beyond nightmares, a cosmic null space of raw, hungry entropy. And there, at the heart of the madness, he saw a sight that chilled him to his core. Thraxus, his old friend, suspended in a web of pulsing biocircuitry. The Riemann's body was flayed open, his consciousness serving as a conduit for the Horde's malevolent will. Donald steeled himself for what he knew must be done. He would save his friend, or what remained of him, and in doing so, perhaps save them all. Donald Williams stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his face etched with lines of exhaustion as he surveyed the remnants of his battered fleet. The void around them churned with debris from the titanic battle they'd just survived. "Status report," he barked, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders. Lieutenant Chen, her uniform singed and torn, looked up from her console. "Sir, we've lost 30% of our ships. The rest are reporting critical damage. Life support systems are failing on multiple vessels." Donald nodded grimly. "Begin immediate evacuation of the most damaged ships. We can't afford to lose any more lives today." As rescue shuttles darted between the wounded vessels, Donald's mind raced. The victory over Gracchus had come at a terrible cost. He thought of Fenris, the old Riemann warlord who'd sacrificed himself to ensure their success. The irony wasn't lost on him. Their greatest enemy had become their savior in the end. "Sir," Chen interrupted his thoughts, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's the Terran Federation Council." Donald steeled himself. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern faces of the council members. Counselor Jameson, a hawk-nosed man with steel-gray hair, spoke first. "Commander Williams, we've received your preliminary report. While we commend your success in neutralizing the Riemann threat, we have concerns about the methods employed." Donald felt his jaw clench. "With all due respect, Counselor, we did what was necessary to prevent a full-scale war." By allying with Fenris? Another counselor interjected. A known war criminal? Fenris gave his life to save us all, Donald countered, his voice rising. Without him, we'd be looking at an all-out conflict between humans and Raymans right now. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Jameson cleared his throat. Be that as it may, Commander, this incident has inflamed tensions among our more conservative factions. There are those calling for a stronger military response against the remaining Riemann holdouts. Donald hit his fist on the console, causing several crew members to jump. Damn it, that's exactly what we're trying to prevent. Can't you see that more violence will only breed more hatred? Watch your tone, Commander, Jameson warned. Remember who you're speaking to. Donald took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. My apologies, counselors, but I implore you to see reason. We have a chance here to build something greater than our individual species. The Guardians represent hope for a united future. There was a long pause as the counselors conferred among themselves. Finally, Jameson spoke again. We understand your position, Commander. For now, you're to continue your diplomatic efforts, but be aware that we'll be watching closely. Any further, unorthodox alliances will be met with severe consequences. The transmission cut off, leaving Donald staring at empty space. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Chen looking at him with concern. What now, sir? She asked quietly. Donald squared his shoulders, his eyes scanning the bridge crew. He saw fear in their faces, but also perseverance. They'd been through hell together, and they were still standing. Now, he said, his voice firm, we get to work. Set a course for the Epsilon colony. We've got a lot of rebuilding to do. As the Retribution limped through the stars, Donald retreated to his quarters. He pulled out a worn data pad, its screen flickering to life with a map of known space. Red markers indicated areas of conflict, yellow showed unstable regions, and green represented zones of relative peace. There was far too much red and yellow for his liking. Donald began to plan. He'd need to reach out to the more reasonable Riemann factions to show them that cooperation was possible. He'd have to find a way to honor Fenris's sacrifice without alienating human hardliners. And all the while, he'd have to keep his fleet ready for the next crisis. Because Donald Williams knew, deep in his bones, that the galaxy wasn't done testing them yet. The real work was just beginning. The Retribution limped through the void, its hull scarred and blackened from the brutal battle against Gracchus's forces. Donald Williams stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the display as Earth grew larger, a blue marble suspended in the endless black. Commodore Chen, status report, he said, his voice weary but firm. Chen looked up from her console, dark circles under her eyes. Sir, we've got multiple ships operating on emergency power. Life support is critical on the Dauntless and the Riemann cruiser Tharok. Medical bays are overflowing on all vessels. Donald nodded grimly. Begin immediate transfer of wounded to Earth's orbital stations. I want damage assessments from every ship captain within the hour. As the battered Guardian Armada approached Earth, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were a long way to go. The victory against Gracchus had come at a terrible cost, and he knew that both humanity and the Raymonds would be looking for someone to blame. His fears were confirmed the moment they entered Earth's orbit. A barrage of transmissions flooded the comms, each more urgent than the last. Sir, Chen called out, we're receiving priority messages from both the Terran Federation Council and the Raymond High Command. Donald braced himself. Put them through, split screen. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern faces of human and Reman leaders. Before Donald could speak, a human counselor, his face flushed with anger, burst out. Commander Williams, your actions in the Gracchus campaign were reckless and heavy-handed. You've brought us to the brink of all-out war. A Raman general, mandibles clicking in agitation, added, the use of banned weaponry against our people cannot go unanswered. We demand reparations and the immediate disarmament of human forces in contested sectors. Donald raised his hands, trying to calm the storm of accusations. Counselors, generals, please. We faced an existential threat. Fenris's sacrifice. Fenris was a war criminal, the human counselor spat. Your alliance with him has only emboldened Riemann extremists. The debate raged on, with both sides calling for increasingly harsh measures against the other. Donald felt the fragile peace they'd fought so hard for slipping away. In that moment of crisis, an idea formed in Donald's mind. A risky move, but one that might save everything they'd built. Enough, he shouted, silencing the bickering leaders. I have a proposal. Our long-range scouts have detected an anomaly in the Perseus Rift. We believe it may be the fabled Dyson Forge, a source of unimaginable technological power left behind by the precursors. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on Donald. I propose a joint expedition, he continued. Human and Riemann forces, working together to unlock the secrets of the Forge. With that kind of power, we could ensure lasting peace for all our peoples. Murmurs of interest rippled through both sides of the screen. After hours of tense negotiation, the mission was approved. Weeks later, Donald stood on the bridge of the newly christened Vengeance, the most advanced ship in the Guardian fleet. Around him, a motley assortment of human and Riemann vessels prepared for the perilous journey into uncharted space. All ships report ready, sir, Chen announced. Donald took a deep breath. Engage slipstream drives. Let's make history. The journey pushed their modified drives to the breaking point. Crew members worked around the clock, patching systems and recalibrating engines as they plunged deeper into the unknown. After months of grueling travel, they finally emerged at the edge of a vast, swirling nebula. Its chaotic energies played havoc with their sensors, but at its heart, they detected something impossible, a star completely encased in an artificial shell. By the gods, a Riemann officer breathed. It's real. Donald leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Take us in, Helm. Nice and easy. As the Vengeance entered the nebula, alarms blared across the bridge. The view screen erupted in a dazzling display of light as tendrils of energy lashed out from the Dyson sphere. Evasive maneuvers, Donald shouted, but it was too late. The energy beams struck the Vengeance, latching onto its hull. Donald watched in horror as sections of the ship began to transform, turning into strange, crystalline structures. It's trying to assimilate us, Chen yelled over the chaos. Donald's mind raced. He remembered an experimental cyber warfare package they'd brought along, untested and potentially dangerous. Chen, get me direct access to the ship's core systems, he ordered. I'm going to upload a virus directly into whatever's attacking us. Donald jacked into the ship's mainframe, his consciousness merging with the digital realm. He found himself face to face with an alien presence of staggering complexity. Acting on instinct, he unleashed the virus, watching as it tore through the invading code. The attack ceased as suddenly as it had begun. Donald opened his eyes to find the bridge crew staring at him in awe. Sir, Chen said, her voice filled with wonder, you've done it. The nebula's defenses, they're down. As the Guardian fleet pushed deeper into the system, the true nature of the Dyson Forge revealed itself. It wasn't just a shell around a star. It was a colossal factory, a cosmic engine of creation beyond anything they'd imagined. But before they could begin to unravel its secrets, a new threat emerged. Ancient defense systems roared to life, unleashing swarms of self-repairing hunter-killer drones. All ships, evasive action, Donald ordered. We need to reach the central control nexus. He assembled an elite strike team, the best of both human and Riemann forces. They fought their way through twisting corridors of impossible geometry, facing wave after wave of alien guardians. At last, they reached the heart of the Forge. Donald stood before a pulsing column of energy, the central synaptic codex of the entire system. This is it, he said, turning to his team. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor serving with you all. With that, Donald plunged his hand into the energy field, feeling his consciousness expand beyond the limits of his physical form. In an instant, he witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, each one seeking to harness the Forge's power for their own ends. He saw the terrible price of that power. Entire galaxies snuffed out in an instant, reality itself twisting under the weight of godlike ambitions, and he understood that no single being could ever hope to control such a force. But Donald Williams was not just any being. He was a guardian, sworn to protect all life, whatever it takes. And in that moment of cosmic revelation, he made a choice. Instead of allowing the forge to overwrite his mind, Donald pushed back. He poured every ounce of his being, his sense of duty, his commitment to peace, his unwavering belief in the potential for good in all sentient life, into the forge's base code. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath, and then something new was born. The Dyson Forge came to life, but not as a weapon or a tool of domination. It began to create, to heal, to restore. Broken worlds were made whole. Dying stars flared back to life. And through it all, Donald felt a sense of purpose and righteousness that transcended his mortal form. He had done it. He had given the galaxy a chance at true, lasting peace. As his consciousness slowly returned to his body, Donald knew that the real work was just beginning. But for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Forgotten. Donald stood on the observation deck of the Hope Forge, his eyes scanning the vastness of space. Worlds that had once been ravaged by war now pulsed with new life, their surfaces aglow with the energy of rebirth. Yet even as he watched civilizations flourish, a deep weariness settled into his bones. Supreme Commander, Chen's voice crackled over the comm. We've detected anomalous readings in Sector 7. Donald's fingers flew over the holographic display, pulling up sensor data. His breath caught as he recognized the signature. No, he whispered. It can't be. Alarms blared throughout the station. Donald sprinted to the command center, his heart pounding. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a horrifying sight. Vast tears in the fabric of space-time ripped open across multiple sectors, disgorging nightmarish shapes that defied comprehension. The Void Horde, Donald breathed. They've returned. Officers scrambled to battle stations as reports flooded in. Guardian fleets engaged the invaders, their weapons flaring against the darkness. But the twisted biomechanoids of the Void simply absorbed the attacks, their forms shifting and regenerating in impossible ways. Donald's mind raced. He knew the Hope Forge's power was the Horde's target, and if they claimed it, all of creation would fall. He turned to his second-in-command. Chen, initiate Protocol Omega. We're going to fortify the Forge itself. As Chen relayed the orders, Donald strode to a secured terminal. His fingers danced across the keys, interfacing directly with the Forge's primordial systems. Lines of transcendent code scrolled across his vision as he began the process of augmenting his own consciousness. The station shuddered as the first wave of void entities struck. Through the viewports, Donald watched Guardian ships disintegrate under barrages of entropic energy. He gritted his teeth, pushing aside the anguish as he focused on his task. "Sir," Chen called out, "the outer defenses are failing. They're breaching the Forge Heart." Donald's eyes snapped open, now glowing with an inner fire. Then it's time for our final stand. He strode to the center of the command hub, where a pulsing column of energy connected to the Forge's core. Without hesitation, he plunged his hands into the stream. Pain lanced through his body as raw creation energy surged into him. The walls around them began to shift, reality itself bending to Donald's will. A shimmering dome of pure nega entropy formed around the heart of the Forge, an impenetrable barrier against the encroaching void. "What now, sir?" Chen asked, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. Donald turned to her, his form now flickering between human and something far beyond. "Now," he said, his voice resonating with cosmic power, "we end this, once and for all." He raised his hand, and a rift tore open in the center of the chamber. Through it, they could see the writhing mass of the Void's prime intelligence, a being of pure entropy, hunger given form. "Come," Donald challenged, his words echoing across realities. "Face me, endless anomaly. Let us settle this beyond the boundaries of existence itself. As the monstrous entity surged forward, Donald's consciousness expanded. In an instant, he was everywhere and nowhere, locked in combat across infinite planes of reality. Stars died in his wake. Entire dimensions crumbled under the force of their clash. Yet, even as the universe frayed around him, Donald held fast to his purpose. With every exchange, he drove the anomaly further from the realms of order, leading it inexorably towards a point of no return. Finally, in a moment that lasted an eternity, Donald achieved convergence. The Omega rebirth paradigm opened before him, a cosmic cycle beyond comprehension. With a final Herculean effort, he channeled the full might of the Hope Forge into a single, reality-altering blast. The void. Anomaly screamed in 14-dimensional agony as it was consumed, its very essence unraveling. Donald felt his own form begin to dissolve, merging with the fabric of creation itself. But as his mortal shell faded, he experienced a moment of perfect clarity. Across the expanse of space and time, new stars burst into life. Planets formed from the ashes of destruction, each one carrying the spark of hope that had driven Donald throughout his journey. The guardian fleets, transformed into seeds of creation, scattered to the far reaches of the cosmos. Donald's consciousness expanded, becoming one with the cycle of rebirth. He saw endless iterations of reality, each one a new chance for life to flourish. And at the heart of it all, he felt the echo of his own spirit, an eternal guardian against the forces of oblivion. As the last vestiges of his human self faded into the cosmic tapestry, Donald Williams knew that his work was not truly finished. For in the vast expanses of eternity, new threats would always arise. But so too would new heroes step forward, ready to take up the mantle of hope.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.